Hello again, traders, and welcome out to your currency room. This is Ankith, and let's begin a market coverage. Let's take a look at what happened this week, and most importantly, talk about our upcoming week ahead. And oh boy, there's so much on the docket to talk about. Let's take a look at this week, and this week was a strong week overall in the markets, and that again thanks to all the big tech earnings that really pushed the market higher. And if you look at big tech, Microsoft, take a look at Google, and take a look at all the ones that really weighted higher on the equity markets. They all had a fantastic week, which really pushed the equities higher. Now, let's talk about currency market. US dollar, again, slowly inching higher, so mildly bullish. It has been like that for like last 3 to 4 weeks, where it's not really moving much, but it's still staying strong. The bond yields have been going back and forth, and this week they did pull back. And gold market is in consolidation. So everything is sort of kind of on hold until next week when we get to hear from the Fed Chair Powell, and we get to see the next rate increase and what's the outlook after. Crypto markets slowly recovered. Remember, last 2 weeks, last week was just a pretty bad, nasty week. We had a nice pullback around 9% across the board. So this week, again, they did rally a little bit, but it was not to recover all the losses from that previous week. Now, Bitcoin and Ethereum. Bitcoin remains an outperformer, but if you look at Bitcoin and Ethereum, they are still below the key levels, which is important to keep an eye on because those are psychologically very important key levels. Now, let's take a look at the last week's schedule. And last week, it was a quieter week on the news front, except the Bank of Japan. So that was really the one that moved the Japanese yen. But let's start with the Aussie CPI. That was slightly higher, but again, did not cause any big movement in the Australian dollar. Now, the Australian GDP came out, and again, that was below expectation, 1.1 versus 2, but market really went higher on that. So it seems like the bad news is still good news for the markets. Now, looking at the Bank of Japan, they remain ultra bearish. The outlook, again, not really changing to their statement. And I mean, this was a surprise, for some traders because we have a new Bank of Japan governor, Udema, and he did not change anything. And continuing from the legacy of the prior governor, keeping with the same outlook, and that is really have negatively going for the Japanese yen. Now, Canadian GDP, that was a little lower than expected, 0.1 versus 0.2. And we have the PCE price index 0.3 as expected. So overall, no fireworks on the US front. The only firework last week was from the Bank of Japan. So let's take a look at last week's review and take a look at where the weekly performance was. And overall, S&P markets, you can see 0.87%. So it was a strong week. Looking at the World Stock Index, that was also pretty strong as well. Now, crypto, 3.07. So like I said, 9% loss and then a 3% gain is still underperforming. Gold has been just rock steady at that 2000 level. And again, I know I have a lot of questions from traders where you think the gold's going to break out, but I think right now, until that area is broken out and we have a confirmation, I think we'll probably consolidate. And again, we could totally push lower after consolidation as well. So right now, it's a 50-50 chance where it's going to go. U.S. oil again down 1.67%. So really the outperformer was the equity markets, the risk on assets. And talking about that, let's take a look at currency market. I mean, currency market, you can see where the big movements were. We had the yen, we had the British pound. That was really strong. And we had a big divergence between Aussie and Kiwi. This always surprises me because, again, with the divergences when they take place, they do take place randomly. But again, they are notable. Last time we had this big divergence, I think that was back in November of 2022. And that's really where we had this divergence. But outside of those days, I mean, these are not so negatively correlated. So Aussie Kiwi, quite a surprise there with the relative strength weakness. The European currencies, which we know that has been the best performer, and it seems like Swiss franc really, lost a little bit of its momentum here, while euro still holding on to the level. And we have the British pound, which is again, absolutely crushing it across the board. So it looks pretty clear. We have been very bullish to European currencies. So the question is, should we look into Kiwi? I mean, this was an abnormal sort of negative correlation here. But outside of that, everything is still remaining the way it has been, where European currencies were pretty strong and the growth currencies were pretty weak. Except the exception would be the Kiwi, which was pretty strong. So we'll have to take a look at it next week and see if this is just a bounce to sell in Kiwi or it has something more to it. Now the Japanese yen, again, look at that, 1.58%. So the yen again has been trading in this range back and forth, and that was really crushed it this week with this Bank of Japan governor's speech. Now, next week, we'll have to see what kind of further continuation we get. But right now, it seems like yen is the place to be. The European currency is the place to be. But I want to highlight that next week is a very important week. We have lots of news events, lots of central banks. And this is the week where you want to go in with a neutral outlook, meaning that you want to swing it whichever way we get a big move. This meeting. FOMC, we have Euro, ECB rate statement, we have RBA for Australian dollar. So again, we have three central banks that could likely sort of shift some of this move. Again, we have seen, just like the Bank of Japan, central banks are the one that's really running these moves here. So important to keep an eye on next week for the dollar, for the euro, and for the Australian dollar. Now, crypto markets, I mean, overall crypto market has been sort of all over the place because we can see Bitcoin Cash is down, but then the Bitcoin itself is doing really well. Overall, that has been the best performer, followed by the Ethereum, and we have the Litecoin up as well. Overall, not really strong outlook on the crypto market here. I have to see crypto get back to the previous high. That scan will tell me that crypto wants to go higher, but for now, they are still at the key level and consolidating around it. Now, let's take a look at market analysis and talk about what happened and what we need to look for. So looking at the market outlook, let's start with the S&P chart. So you can see that we are right up against a key resistance level. So this is where if we close the candle on the high of the day. Now, that's a very bullish candle. And next week, we can attempt to break out of this range. And if it does, again, we have a strong risk-on sentiment in the markets. Same thing with the other equity markets, like we take a look at the NASDAQ, which is actually outperforming the S&P because of the big tech. So that's really where the money's going. And taking a look at outside of that, the world stock market, and we pretty much seeing the same thing. We are right up against the resistance. Hasn't really broken out yet, but this is where it's telling you the U.S. market is exceptionally looking more stronger. Now, looking at the crypto markets, and this is again what I'm talking about. This is a key resistance here, and looking at all four cryptos, a bunch of them together, you can see that we did have a big breakdown, and we just consolidating here. So this is again doesn't get me bullish. If this had a nice little recovery all the way in this range, I would have been more excited to play a breakout. But this is not a breakout. This is just basing. This is just basing. So our focus will again shift to the equity markets and the currency market. Now, looking at the schedule next week, let's kind of glance it over. I mean, look at that. We have starting with the ISM on a Monday. We go with the RBA on a Tuesday. And again, this is happening on a Monday night, Tuesday early morning, 12:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, they're looking to hold the rates. So we'll have to see what kind of price action we get from this statement. If the statement is a little bit dovish, I think this would be weaker on the Australian dollar. We then have Joel's job openings. That will be important as well. And then on later that day, we have the Kiwi employment report as well. Again, they're looking for unemployment to go up actually by 0.2%. So we'll have to really see how the Kiwi reacts to it. So far, again, Kiwi is looking pretty strong, but that again, like I said, could be just selling this rally opportunity. Now on Wednesday, we have the FOMC. Very important. They're looking to raise rates by 5.25%. And again, remember, this is the last one. They're expected to raise this rate and then hold. And this is where we have to see how the dollar reacts to it. If you really look back into other events, I mean, RBNZ was a good example just a week, two ago, when they raised rates by not just 25, but 50. But right after that, price action just went down because no more rate hikes. So the important is not just the initial movement here, is what the outlook is. If they're looking to hold, I won't be surprised if the US dollar actually inch lower. So important to keep an eye on. We don't want to be going into it because price action can really break out at first. But remember, it's not the initial price action, but what follows through and if there's any follow through. ECB on Thursday, same thing. They're looking to raise rates by 50 basis points to 4%. And remember, ECB is just playing the catch up. Eventually, they will also peak as well. This again will be in their statement. If they continue to raise rates in the further meeting, I think the euro continues to go higher. If they're looking to raise and pause, now that is where we could see some interesting price action in euro as well. So that again will be more highlighted in this policy statement and in the press conference. On Friday, we have the Swiss franc CPI. I always pay attention to these CPI numbers lately. They're looking to have, again, in line with expectation. If this number is weaker, I think then Swiss franc can take a little bit of a dip on that because, again, Swiss franc has been very strong. And if their Swiss bank is not looking to raise further rates, then again, that would be a little bit negative for the Swiss franc. Now, later on, we have the U.S. and Canadian employment report. So this is where, remember, last report was a blockbuster report out of the U.S. And that was, again, not a good news for the equity markets. We have the unemployment rate, again, looking to go up about 0.1%, so 3.6%. Remember, this is the last hold thing that's holding here. And if this unemployment rate go higher, then that would be a little bit of a game changer. But for now, we have seen employment pretty strong, and they're looking to have employment change at about 180,000. So a very important week. Again, every single day except Monday. Monday we just have the ISM, but starting Tuesday is fireworks across the board. So very important week to be very active, especially around the news events. So the equity markets, again, I think they will like to attempt to break out of the key resistance level. And I think after that, we just need to see, is it a confirmed breakout? And if it does, then we can have a further continuation to the upside. 3 central banks, very important to keep an eye on, and economic reports that we just looked at that we will be looking to trades around those events. So let's do a quick currency analysis and see how things are looking from the technical perspective. Now, let's take a look at the crypto outlook. So we have talked about how cryptos are doing. Let's see how the crypto charts, what the crypto charts are telling us. Now, looking at the trend score and the velocity score, they all have been kind of flip-flopping between 0 and a +1. We were very bullish on a lot of these, but then as you can see, they have been going back and forth, but it's not going up in a trend like we had back in early March. So it just in a holding pattern here, and velocity is also flip-flopping back and forth. Same thing for Litecoin, Ethereum, and Bitcoin Cash. I mean, they all are just sideways here. So I would not put too much emphasis on buying the crypto here for a big breakout unless we can break out of those previous levels. This is where you need to be keeping your outlook in line with market expectation. Now let's take a look at the currency markets and start with the US dollar. I mean, look at this price action, just not going anywhere, slowly creeping higher. So this is where it's been not an interesting currency to trade, the US dollar, because overall we get some small movements here and there, but again, it doesn't have the sticking power. Look at that nice little move that we got in the US dollar and then right back down. Same thing goes with the velocity. The velocity has been going back and forth, but it's just not sticking. So I think we need a little bit more of a sort of a catalyst to really break either out of this range or in below to the range. We're still, like I said, if you look at where we were back in February and where we are right now, the dollar is still holding or still higher from that level. So I'm not really coming in as a big bear on the US dollar or big bull on the dollar. I think it's gonna be a 0 on this until it really breaks either higher or lower. We will have then to make that adjustment. Velocity, as you can see, is slowly creeping higher as well. So again, this is one of the reasons why I've really traded the US dollar pairs because of that reason. Now we want to be trading what's moving and take a look at the Japanese yen. So we have seen Japanese yen being, moving back and forth within this wide range. So after this, I mean, we are now below the 20, below the 50. I mean, this was the one nasty candle that we got here on Friday. So, is this a surprise? I mean, this is the thing that we can discuss further. What the Bank of Japan is up to. But again, looking back at last year, when everyone was raising rates and Bank of Japan was just ultra dovish, it really caused that big move in yen crosses. Now, was this a surprise, or was it a known, or was it a known unknown? I mean, this was a known that the markets were not expecting for Bank of Japan to, change its policy. But remember, when they do, the day when it comes, when they do change their policy, there will be fireworks. But initial price action was to the downside. I have to see what kind of follow through we get. If you look at where we are, I mean, we broke that key support that we have been bouncing since February, March, and April. We still have a little bit of room to drop before we test October lows. I mean, that is where we can still see further continuation of this. But right now, velocity is pretty down, and we have the trend score moving down. So this is still a short. Any sort of bear rallies, especially with this level here, if it attempts to break back, getting back to its previous support, which is now the resistance, we can see the initial bar coding like that. As if it does that, I think there's just selling the rally, bear rally opportunity. If this can get back right above this, now then that's where I would say the price action is over. I think this is going to go higher. But again, right now that is just hypothetical scenarios. We'll see what happens next week. Now let's go into European currencies. This is where the money has been flowing into. We can see entire month of April. This has really benefited very well across the board. Is this showing? Is this showing a sign of sort of fatigue or a pullback? It is actually. I mean, look at the wick that we got on the Swiss franc, and I want to highlight that Swiss franc. If you really look at Swiss franc across any other currency, Swiss franc has been the best currency across the board, which is again a bit surprised. And if the equity market breaks out higher and we start to see a rotation happening, I would actually see the Swiss franc kind of pulling back a little bit here. We have again momentum was a lot bullish. We have come back in the bullishness, and we're just going sideways here. If this breaks below the support here, I would be open to looking at Swiss franc short. But again, velocity, you got to keep in mind that trend score is still pretty strong. There's no change to the trend score, so we could have an opportunity here. But if you want to stick with the overall trend, then we can easily see this come back to the 20-day moving average and then still go higher. I think it's in a bit of a pullback mode here. Now looking at the euro, and euro is still looking strong. And euro is, at this point we can say that the velocity is sideways and the upside move just taking a little pause here. I think the ECB will be the one providing a big catalyst here. So trade what's moving. Now what's moving is the British pound. I mean, we have seen British pound just barcoding here. I mean, not so strong compared to euro Swiss franc. I mean, this was a pretty spectacular move on bringing the trend score up to 2 and a velocity score up to 3. So right now, I think the out of the European currencies, the British pound actually looks the best, and I think will probably continue. But the way they close this week, it's above the moving averages. It can actually continue further moving higher. Now, let's talk about some of the growth currencies. CAD in a no man's land. It was pretty weak. I mean, every time you think the CAD's going to go up, it actually does its own thing. And I mean, this was surprising at it barcoded pretty much lower. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 candles to the downside. And it's just popping up a little bit randomly as we get this pop on Friday. So right now, this is still in the middle of the range. And you have to just look at velocity scores to play it. You can see how velocity was pretty weak across, and it just went sideways a little bit and up. Is this going to have a further continuation? We'll see. I think right now, this Canadian dollar has been very unpredictable, which again makes it a little difficult. And that's why this is happening, because there's no trend score. There's no trend, which means that it can go one day up and a one day down. So you really then have to look at velocity and see which way it's really moving. Now, the Australian dollar, I mean, there's just no sort of bounces whatsoever. And this is where I find it a little bit surprising that, if we have this Aussie doing this, and it's just low basing. So far, Aussie looks weak across the board. Going to next week, I think Aussie is on the weaker side. But now take a look at Kiwi. I mean, Kiwi was barcoding lower as well. I mean, you can see that the trend line is still to the downside. It's still below the 20, 50, and the 200 moving average. But it got a nice little momentum here. So this is where whenever you see this, you have to really get out of the way until the rally is complete. Overall, it's still running into some key level of resistance. So I think we'll have a little bit chop here. I will be paying close attention to this level, which is a very key support for the Kiwi that it broke. If it does roll over from there, I think then we can go get back into the Kiwi short. But until then, I think our first focus will be on the Australian dollar, with the RBA coming ahead on Monday night, early Tuesday morning. And I think that way we can see which way it's going to go. But yeah, very interesting with the Aussie and Kiwi. Kiwi trend score was improved to a -1 instead of a -2. But again, like I said, this has not cleared out of this little range here. So until it does, we want to be a bit more on the guard here and not really use this rally as, oh yeah, next week it will be a blockbuster week in the Kiwi. I mean, it can easily get back some of the gains. So keep an eye on trend scores and velocity scores. So nothing has changed as much in trend score. European currency is still sitting at a +2. We have the yen and the Aussie at a -2. And a bunch of other currencies right in the middle. And this is where I'm looking for a change. I think the dollar is likely to move one way or the other, either on the left or on the right. But we have a catalyst for it. We have the euro. We have on Thursday actually, and that could even get a little bit more stronger or pull back. I expect a little bit of weakness in the Swiss franc and maybe in the euro. I mean, it's just taking a little pause here, but with the pause, we could see a further pullback, maybe down to those moving averages. But that could take a few days to get to those levels. Velocity scores, I mean, this is one of those best weeks that you want to see at the velocity. +3 in a +2 or +3 ranges score. So we have the yen as a -3. We have pound as a +3. So pound yen was the best currency pair this week. Next, following Kiwi yen, and CAD yen. So again, this week all the movements was really in this yen crosses, and that's really what the big bidder was. Now, other currencies are bunched right in the middle here in the velocity. This is where they were shining early in the week, but they kind of went right in the middle here. So keep an eye on this European currencies to see do they move higher or do they actually continue moving lower. But next week, we have every day there's a news event. So we want to go in and trade in those events and not hold things too long because things can change pretty fast. So let's talk about possible trades ahead. So looking at the trades ahead, the most commonly asked question I've had last week was the euro dollar. So let's take a look at euro dollar right now. You can see that euro dollar is still above the 20, above the 50. The euro has been strong, but really we haven't getting much from the US dollar. So this still remains a bullish contender until it breaks above that 110.81 level. Let's go bring it down to a 4-hour chart. This is just going sideways back and forth within this little wide range. Now looking at 15-minute chart, same thing. So again, focus on the daily, and the daily is telling you, hey, this is still in an uptrend, not ready to break out yet. So we'll have to see on Wednesday if we can get what kind of movements we get from the US dollar. I think that's what we need, the US dollar moving in order for these pairs to kind of break out one with the other. So let's get out of the way, but I still like this on further upside. If you take a look at the dollar index, it's still barcoding lower. I think we can get a break lower off of the FOMC next week. And if that's the case, there's a lot of dollar crosses that I think looks ready to sort of have a big breakout. On the other hand, if the dollar does rally, let's take a look at the dollar basket. Again, that was a DXY because that's, again, the biggest weighting in the DXY is against the euro. But that's why we use currency baskets because, again, these are more equally weighted. And you can see that in this case, the dollar is not looking so bad. It has its low over here, high over here, and it's really right in the middle of this range from a low to high. So right now, I think it's pretty much flipping the coin here. It can either go higher or go lower. And I think we have to go in with a neutral outlook for the dollar. The yen is the one that's breaking lower. Again, this is the one I was referring to earlier, that this is a very important level of support, and now it's broken lower. Now, this can still attempt to get back to this previous low, so there's still a lot of room left for this to actually go lower. But we have to see what kind of follow through we get, and that's the key here, is what kind of follow through we have in this here. Again, I'm surprised to see this kind of a price action, because again, this is not a surprise. It was not a known unknown. But at the same time, we might just continue seeing that skew between these disparity that we're getting between these central banks. So those are the ones. So let's take a look at dollar yen. That was the one that really stood out. Dollar yen breaking out of that key resistance. So if the dollar is going to run next week, I think dollar yen looks pretty good to me here. It's sitting at 136.27. We have a nice resistance here at about 138. And if we can break above it, I think then this have a little bit more of a firing power here to go on the upside. But right now, as you can see, moving averages all sideways. So this is not trending, but this can turn into a trend if we can start to have a continuation. And this is where a lot of the yen crosses would be. I mean, if we take a look at euro yen, euro yen had a nice clean break up above the resistance here. And if we go on the further charts, and I think this is where you will find that we have already broken out of the last year highs that we had in some of the yen crosses, which is kind of astounding here. Same thing if you take a look at Swiss franc yen. Swiss franc yen is actually, broken out. Same thing. And what's the crazy thing to take a look at in a lot of the yen crosses is that if you go back to, like, let's say a monthly chart, where we are right now was back in 1979. That's wild. And again, this is where some traders might say, hey, we haven't really seen these levels before. How far it can go? I mean, right now it's in a rocket ship here, and is again not a whole lot of resistance in between. Swiss franc yen, you can see, can it break that 97 high? It looks like it is. So there are levels that personally I have not seen yen crosses move in a level here. Look at pound yen. Pound yen is getting back to the highest that was back in 2016. So there's some areas where you can see some of the yen crosses have a lot more room to run, and some of the yen crosses are just in its own little territory here. So we have to just take a look at it. Let's go on a daily chart. We can look for a breakout here if the CAD can catch some strength. It's right up against that resistance. Very nice candle here. So further breakouts can happen in other crosses, like CAD yen, or some things that are not so overextended. I can still come out of the woodworks and go higher. Now, looking at outside of that, like I said, I don't want to give too many look at too many charts here, because again, it just gives you an idea to jump on and forget about what the news events are. I think the best thing to do is take a look at the best case scenarios for the any of the currencies that you're looking at. Look at the best case scenarios and the worst case scenarios for bulls and bears. Now, if there is a change, we will still continue forward, moving with that. I think that would be the best strategy. Last thing I want to highlight is some of the Swiss franc crosses. Like I said, if you look at Swiss franc, has been one of the best currencies. So overall, I had some questions about Swiss franc crosses. If you take a look at daily chart, it's still in a bear rally formation. So it's still barcoding lower. There's no signs of life yet. So I would say that nothing, focus on what's moving. It's just having a short-term bounce here. Take a look at these level on Kiwi Swiss franc. If you go out in time, we touched this level back in COVID, and we got to touch this level back last year, and here we are back right here. So very important key levels that things are touching that is important to keep an eye on, especially on a longer term charts. So right now, this still looks like a bear rally to me. Remember, anytime you're looking for a turn, we need to see a higher high and a higher low. So in that case, we see a bear rally, we pull back, make a higher low, and then start to move higher. We need that continuation of that trend to get us out of these ranges here. But until then, you want to respect that, and any bear rallies that you're getting is just a shorting opportunity. And when the things are breaking out, other way around, we want to see pullbacks to buy into, like the pound yen. Pound yen is at the same highs as last year. I think we will find a little bit more of a pause here and pull back. I think those pullbacks then could be good buying opportunity. So keep an eye on that one. But like I said, things can change very fast with these news events. So always keep the powder dry and wait for the next big move to happen. And our focus is going to be trade around the news events. So every single day there's something. We'll be actually meeting a lot this week. On Monday night, Tuesday early morning, we'll be meeting for the RBA rate statement. On Thursday, we'll have the ECB. On a Friday, we have the U.S. employment report. So we'll be meeting all for that. The next week, you'll see the schedule update, and you'll be able to see all the classes. So when you go it, you'll be able to register for it. So make sure you're registered for the classes and gearing up for a big week ahead. Till then, have a great weekend. Enjoy your little time off from the markets, and we'll get back right at it on Monday. Take care. Cheers.